Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Staying Sweet, the podcast. I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Hannah Tucker. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Hannah. I do food, fitness and lifestyle content creation. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and that's my full-time job. That's what I do.
Amazing. So what was the first sort of steps into social media? Was it Instagram? Was it a TikTok account? How did you start and how have you found it?
So I'm an Instagram girl, true and true. I've always just preferred that platform. I feel like I shouldn't say that, but yeah, I started out on Instagram. I actually started, like many people, posting during lockdown. I was bored. I was still at uni at the time and I had a lot of extra time. And my story actually started because I had an eating disorder and I was still kind of recovering from it. It already happened by the time lockdown came in, but I did find it quite hard when we went into lockdown, and I used Instagram as like a personal diary for that, and that's kind of how it grew. And because I was acting as if no one was watching, but turns out quite a lot of people were watching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well when it's that content around lockdown, lots of people found it as an outlet for themselves, as a way to kind of communicate with the outside world.
Yeah.
How did you kind of get to that point where you knew people were watching you? Did it kind of change the way that you were creating initially, or did you find it, something that you blocked out and you just sort of continued on creating?
Yeah, so I think the big turning point for me was obviously all of us, we were on our phones so much in that first lockdown. Most people were on furlough, whatever, and just had so much time. So it only took me it was about 4 weeks, and I'd gained 10,000 followers on Instagram. So I was a bit like, so it didn't really sink in, and I don't think it actually sunk in the power of social media for me. And I mean, at the time I was studying marketing, so I've always been interested in advertising, marketing, all of that space. And it was when I hit 10K that people started kind of reaching out to me, saying they wanted to send me stuff. And I was like, this is sick. And I kind of realized that I could take advantage of it a bit more. And I was like, okay, now I'm like building this, personal brand. People are buying into me. And I found that because I was doing it as a hobby, when I would like stop posting, people would message me and be like, what's going on? Like, you okay?
Yeah.
And people were like quite like invested. And that's when it really sunk in. I was like, okay, like, wow, like this is, people are watching and people are getting involved and getting behind me, which is obviously such a lovely feeling. And yeah, that's probably when it first started to sink in.
That's really cool. Were there any brands that approached you in that initial early stage that you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they want to work with me?
I think the first one that was kind of like, oh my gosh, would have been Gymshark. Just at the time, as a gym goer, I feel like they still are such a massive brand in the space. But I grew up watching people like Whitney Simmons and a lot of their athletes, and that was, my pastime was watching people like that on YouTube. So I think I got sent a massive PR box of all the Whitney Simmons Gymshark collection about 3-4 months into posting, and I think that I actually recorded it on my phone as well. Like, I was like, I know I'm going to want to look back at this. So I recorded myself opening it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That was probably my first big one.
That's amazing. So you started on Instagram, grew very, very quickly, and established an audience for yourself very quickly. How did you then decide that you needed to kind of cross-pollinate over other social media platforms? Was there any pressure to do that, or did you feel like it was like the natural evolution for your page? Or
I think at the beginning there was no pressure. Like, it wasn't my full-time job. I was doing it around uni, and then I was actually in my final year, so 6 months into posting, I then finished uni, and then I got a full-time job in marketing, like I was in-house. So at first everyone was on TikTok, people doing those silly dances in lockdown. So I started like just posting. I was kind of like cross-promoting using content I'd made for Instagram and putting it on TikTok, and then making extra content for TikTok. But it was all very silly stuff. I didn't really take it seriously. And then obviously I think a few months kind of into that, like, started learning the power of TikTok and was like, right, I should, put more effort into this. But I didn't really start putting effort into TikTok and the content until I decided to make the switch to going full time. I feel like your approach really changes when it's your job instead of like just a hobby.
Definitely. And what would you say alongside the Instagram is your favourite content to create. Do you like that sort of short, snappy TikTok content, or do you prefer more long form, like with the YouTube channel that you've established?
I love YouTube. I think I'm in that generation where I don't know if you're the same, grew
so
up
the same.
watching
I love
YouTube.
it.
It's like my comfort thing. If I'm at home cooking, I have, it's on in the kitchen. I have there's so many people I love to watch. So I would say, YouTube is probably my favorite content to make, just because I enjoy watching it as well. TikTok is probably the most frustrating because it's the videos that you put no effort into. You make it in like 2 seconds and end up going viral. And
so true.
Which is kind of like great, but then also really annoying when I'm like, especially if I film a lot of food content. I've spent ages like developing a recipe. I'm like, oh, this recipe tastes so good. Can't wait for people to try this. And I post it and it just doesn't get any views. It just doesn't get the reach I want. It's so annoying because, and then I'll post like a silly video like making a joke to some trending sound, and that just gets
or it's like got no relevance really to your context of what you create, and then suddenly you get an audience influx that have nothing to do with what you're posting, and they're kind of like confused as to why you've created what you've created and blown up. So
100%.
It's one of those strange platforms, isn't it?
And also because you don't want that. I don't really want to go viral posting about a niche that isn't really my thing, because then those followers that you might gain from that video aren't going to stay around, because they're soon going to realize that's not really the kind of content you post, and it's not what they want to, which is fair enough, but it's all about targeting the right audience, isn't it?
Definitely. And tell me a bit more about your creation journey. Would you say that you're somebody who operates very solo? You create the content, you edit, you schedule, or do you work with a team? Explain that a little bit more.
I'm a one-man band. I always get reached out people saying, oh, let us edit your videos and stuff, especially for long form content like YouTube. But to be honest, sometimes I just leave the camera rolling, and I think I don't want to send this off to someone, because
that is always my biggest fear. Like, do they know when to cut it, and is it going to just go straight up, or?
I think they like send it back to you for review and stuff, but I'm like, that's actually a bit of a longer process, having to watch it back and then go back to them. Honestly, I've actually realized that the less people involved in a project, it's actually just so much easier. It's so much easier to like correlate people, or just align everyone instead of all the back and forth. So and I actually love doing the editing. Like that's my favorite part. I love getting creative with edits and stuff. So I don't think I'd ever hire someone to do that, I guess, if I needed the extra time, but
that's really interesting. And what about things like management? Has that been something that you consider? Do you work with management?
So I do actually have a manager. We have a really great relationship. We've been together now for like 2.5 years, I want to say. And that really helped me at the beginning. I think it's a bit of a kind of unspoken topic when it comes to, obviously a lot of people are blowing up online now. It's really easy to go viral, and it seems to be the job that everyone wants, which is great. It's great to see. But I feel like if you suddenly blow up overnight, there's no one telling you what you shouldn't do, if you need management or not. So I went quite well without having any management, and to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I like being in control and like managing my inbox, but it's also great to reach out, because a lot of these management companies will have great relationships with agencies and stuff. So I think it's been very beneficial to me, but we have a great relationship that he understands that I like to be very much in control. So I have transparency on a lot of stuff.
That's
so
really cool.
It's very much a working together instead of like him just managing me, which is nice.
I've had this conversation a few times with different creators, and it's always it's an interesting topic, because I feel like you can kind of grow so big and not necessarily have the best understanding of how to sort of navigate the industry. I always kind of compare it to like Love Islanders, for example, when they first were sort of blowing up overnight, and they were the average person, and then suddenly into the limelight. It's like, how do you know what to do necessarily? What's best practice? What's good for your personal brand?
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say there's anything that you've like navigated that you think, gosh, I wish somebody had told me not to do that, or had helped me or given me direction to kind of create maybe more honed content, or be careful on certain topics, or?
I think, in terms of the management aspect, like talking to lots of different people, they are an extension of your team, so it's got to be someone you get on with. Also, like, what's the industry flat rate for percentages? I had some people come to me and try and convince me that like taking 40% was the average, and that is not the case. So I think it's just about educating yourself. I think the biggest one for me, which I would advise to anyone going into like full-time employment, like being self-employed, is like the tax return side of it. How do you want to set yourself up, how you're working? Because like I said, I started when I was at uni. I was just like invoicing the one or two brands, and I didn't really think much of it. It was like pocket money for me. It was just a bit of a side hustle. And then obviously that just slowly picked up, and before I knew it, like the tax man came after me and was like, you owe X, and I was like, crap. So I feel like that's something that I'm really passionate about people getting educated on, because I just had no clue. I remember crying to my dad, and I was like, I owe this much money and I don't know how, and I don't know what to do about it. How do I go forward from here? And luckily my parents are really lovely and understanding, and they sat down with me and they were like, look, here are your options. You know, you can be a sole trader, you can be registered as a business, and help me kind of navigate that. So yeah, I would say that's probably my biggest thing. Probably not the answer you were expecting.
No, but that is a really good point, because I feel like people of all ages are creating content and at that point where they're monetizing, and it is a weird platform in that everything is public, so there's no way that you could do it and not get into trouble if, you know, they literally have physical evidence that you're making money.
Especially with like the TikTok Creator Fund now. Like obviously, like you said, like there's, you know, 16-year-olds who are posting on TikTok, and their video goes viral and they make like £1,000 off it with the Creator Fund, and they're doing that a few times a month. They'll hit the threshold before they know it. And as a 16-year-old, you know what it's like. I was very good at spending money. I loved making money when I was younger. I always had a job because I loved having my own money. I never wanted anyone to like, you know, have to provide for me. I loved doing that because then no one can, if it's your money, no one can question how you spend it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I understand that when you're 16 to like 18, you're just going to splash all of that on holidays and stuff, and maybe not put anything aside. So it's something that should be spoken about a bit more.
Definitely. No, that's a really interesting point, and I think it's a good sort of thing to mention as well, particularly if there's someone watching that's maybe growing their channel. Or
just something to look out for.
All the different like avenues of passive income, essentially, because even like with gifting now, you have to kind of, I think you have to declare most of it, don't you?
I think it depends on the value and stuff.
It's a grey area, isn't it?
I think they're really, because it's such a, it's a job that wasn't recognised like 5-10 years ago, whereas now it's recognised as a job, like a full-time role. So I think HMRC are really knuckling down on it, aren't
they? They've got like all the means to find out what you're doing.
It'll be interesting to see how they navigate it in the next few years.
Definitely, definitely. Especially the tax return things. I'm in the same boat as you. It's like when I first did that initial tax return, I was like, what am I doing? I have no clue.
Yeah, and they just send you a sort code and account number, and it's like, please send X amount. I'm like,
is this legitimate? It's quite a scary thing, I think.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're almost not taught it in schools or as an option, that you can be self-employed and that is a route for you.
Well, even like I said, I did marketing at university, and they spoke a lot about, you know, freelance being an option when you leave, but they didn't really educate anyone on how to go about that, you know, building a portfolio, reaching out to people, stuff like that. And I just feel like even if they just did it as like a one-off seminar, it would have been really helpful.
Definitely. And with that being said, and sort of segueing over to community, something that I really want to touch on with you, because I feel like it's something that you've done really well across all your platforms. Can you tell me a bit more how you've established that community with your content initially, and how you've transitioned that into sort of more common trends now that we're seeing, like with events and things like that? Where did your community start, and where is it now?
So I feel like obviously the community completely started online. I still am a very chatty people. I like to reply to everyone in my DMs and stuff. And I was obviously at the beginning of my journey. The kind of content I was posting, I would literally do like a photo dump and then have like almost like a diary entry underneath it. So I think people felt like they kind of knew, and people would respond to that and we would chat. So there was already that element of community. But I was actually at an event the other day with Click. I don't know if you know what Click is.
No, I don't actually.
Bit of advertisement for Click here. Click is an app where you can basically find communities in your local area. So I could go on there. I'm a Southwest London girl. And I could find communities in my local area, all different niches, you know, a tennis club, girls that like to walk, girls who like the gym, and they've got all different events on there, free, paid, you name it. It's a new app, so it's kind of just like getting going, and this was like they're doing some crowdfunding, so they went and had a talk, and they had an amazing board of advisories there talking about it and talking about community and how. And one of the questions they asked was, what's the difference between community and audience? And it is that in real life element. So we were saying that obviously you have an audience when you have a social media platform and you've got that following, you have an audience, but it's not necessarily a community. A community of the people who will watch your content and they'll say like, oh, did you see Hannah's like video? And they'll almost like refer you to their friends. That's someone, they're a community, they're backing you. Whereas you can obviously just follow someone silently.
Yep.
And that is why there's so much power in bringing that community in real life. And the reason I started a community was actually not because, one, I wanted to take advantage of the following that I had and, you know, actually utilize that platform, because I was like, this is great that I've got a platform, but I just don't feel like I'm using it for the right reasons. And I've lived in London for 3 years. Sorry, this is a bit of a long story.
No, I like this.
I've lived in London for 3 years, and when I first moved to London, I was working full time, and other than work, and I worked at a very small company, so I didn't really meet that many people in my company. I really struggled to meet people. I was like, how am I meant to meet people in London? People were very much just, they're here to work. So, you know, everyone's like head down on the tube, you know, you're not making small talk with people on the tube. You go to the gym, people are in and out, they don't want to chat. So it was really hard to meet people, and luckily, like, I started putting myself out there, and I've made an amazing group of friends now in London. But about beginning of this year, I was like, I still feel like, you know, it's really hard, and I realised how much my life had changed after making the friends that I've made in London, and I just feel so much more relaxed and less lonely. I'm just so happy and felt really complete, and I was like, I want to give this joy to other people. And obviously everyone who kind of follows me, you would assume, has similar interests. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do something that just is a nice way for these girls to meet up, meet me, and like meet other people, and just utilize that platform and bring it into real life. And I think it's something that's really valuable for brands now.
Definitely. I feel like it kind of spans not just the creator space, but for brands and products as well. We're seeing a lot more influence with like community trips, community meetups, community events, even for not just like influencers and creatives, but the actual like paying customer. Do you think that that's been something that has excited you in terms of like what's possible with your space and your audience?
100%. I think that is kind of part of it as well, is that having a community just opens up so many different avenues. And it's definitely something that they were talking about at this clique event, the possibility of like the death of the influencer. They were like, don't worry, we don't think it's dying, but it's just shifting in the sense that people crave, especially after COVID, I know we're like 3 years after it, but people still crave that in life like interaction, that real life interaction. And they want to get involved, and they want to feel part of their brands. And I think the reason Gymshark, for instance, did so well is because they had this athlete scheme, and people would be so invested in their athletes. They felt a part of the brand and the community. And they were the first people really to start doing that, to host like community events. And I mean, it's paid off. Like, they've grown so much, and they still do it now, obviously, from their store in London, and it just makes such a big difference. I mean, even for me, like, I love to buy from brands where I feel like they're giving back to their community and they're listening to their audience. So I think it's just beneficial for brands so much. I'm really like a big advocate for it.
Definitely. No, I love that. And tell me a bit more about what you offer at the moment. Have you got events coming up? Is it something that is like a regular thing? What can your audience or new people listening today that found you listen to this podcast and want to get involved, what can they expect?
So my community is called the London Coffee Club. It's not that exciting a name. It's actually quite hard to come up with a name, and it was just invented on my sofa on like a Tuesday night, so the branding's not great either, but it's obviously not about that. It's about just meeting like-minded girls in London. So we meet up once a month in a different park across London. We meet just at a coffee shop, we grab a coffee, and we go for a walk, so it's accessible for everyone.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and it's just so nice. It's a nice way to like explore new areas. I kind of love it too, and I've met so many lovely girls from it and like made friends from it, and I know other girls have. And I think the first time we did it, I was just so like in awe on how many girls just were keen to put themselves out there. Because for me, it was very daunting. I went by myself the first time, and I was like, oh God, I'm really nervous to go. And my boyfriend said to me, Hannah, like, the whole idea is, you know, you're putting yourself out there, you're meeting people. You can't turn up with a friend. Like, you need to go by yourself, like put yourself in their shoes. And yeah, the fact that so many people turned up, and I saw so many people keen to meet people. I was like, right, I need to keep doing this. So we do that every month. And then as well as that, we do like trying to make it a monthly thing, doing like other events that fit within different niches to help people kind of meet people within certain niches. So our next one coming up is on the 11th of August, and we're doing a like studio takeover at Cycle.
That's so cool.
Cycle is one of my favorite like London studios.
Yeah.
So we're offering a reformer class or a ride class, followed by lunch from Attis, which is like one of my favorite salad places.
So good.
Yeah, and then I've got another brand on board that are like supplying all the goodie bags for all the girls. We did it before and it was just so successful. So I was like, I can't wait to do another one of these again. So we're doing one in Shoreditch this time, and that's gonna be super fun. So it's a good chance to try a new class, because I'm, as a fitness kind of girl, I think it is quite daunting to try some of the classes across London. One, they're expensive.
And really scary on your own.
Yeah, I feel like if you're turning up by yourself, it can be quite daunting, and especially if you get in there and people do know each other because they come regularly. So the whole idea is that you can come for cheaper than you would if you were to do a one-off class, and also know that everyone in that room, it's all gonna be girls, and most of them have not tried this class before. It's beginner friendly, like it's just a chilled space. You know, you can actually talk to the instructor and don't feel like you're interrupting the class because we're all in the same boat kind of thing. You can ask for help, whereas I feel like you're less likely to ask for help if you don't know anyone in the room, do you?
So true.
And yeah, just break down that barrier. It's just a nice way to try something new, and I think doing an activity kind of breaks down that awkwardness if you're meeting someone for the first time. Like, you know, it's an icebreaker straight away.
So true. And I think as well, we're more open-minded to activities and trying new things, and I do think that comes down to social media. Actually, I think social media has broken down the awkwardness almost of, you know, starting as a beginner and it being okay, because I think there's so many things that we can go into and we're expected to be expert at it, but actually half the joy of trying something different is that you don't know what you're doing, and it's a hobby. It's for pure joy, not to be a perfectionist and be perfect at it.
100%. I'm really loving that shift at the moment in content, especially with, I mean, you could probably say that originally I was a fitness, like creative food and fitness solely. I love the way everyone's kind of shifted into more lifestyle, and a lot of the fitness girls, like the OG kind of fitness creators, have now shifted into that. You know, I don't need to be the best at this. I just want to try new things. Like, I just love to move my body. I just like doing different types of exercise. I don't care what it is. I want to try something new. So I'm a big advocate for that. And to see so many other girls posting that similar message is so nice. And I think it's just so much easier to consume for other people. I think it's so, like, I was getting a bit annoyed with all the running and people just popping out and running a marathon and posting it on the internet. Like, it's great, like, congratulations, but you know, some people, like, that is a big step, and it's quite nice to see influencers come out and say, like, that was tough. You know, that was that wasn't easy to do, and just be raw and honest about it.
Definitely, because those journeys, you know, what you share on social media is what you share, but that behind closed doors it could be a totally different story.
There's so many layers to it now, I think. And I think when I first started in that avenue, I knew that I was never going to be solely fitness. I found it quite toxic. I think like 5 years ago that fitness influencer world was quite toxic,
quite hardcore, and
just like it was
lots of goal stuff. I think it was around,
it was very like aesthetic, and I think it still is now. Like, it does upset me that, you know, if you've got rock solid abs and like a big bum, like, you'll just go viral every time, which is obviously great, you know, good for you, you've worked for your body. But it's sad to see that people are still sometimes buying into content just because of how someone looks.
So true, because there's strong people that are like mentally tough that have got through, you know, like marathons, or put themselves out there and gone to a running club or tried a new gym, or like you say, decided to come along to a class and meet new people. Those are mentally fit people as well, and that takes a certain level of strength to kind of get yourself out there.
And it's not, for most people, it's not realistic to have like rock solid, like 0% body fat.
I feel like it's just not an attainable thing necessarily for everyone. And
well, everyone has different body types, don't they? Obviously some people are naturally just really slim and hold like lower body fat percentages, but I think that's something that's kind of it's in the past a bit more, and just realistic people. Even like people, I actually love watching people who go to work, you know, they work office jobs. I love that content.
It's almost like completely done like a role reversal. It's become like the interesting thing, and like seeing people actually work, and Because the
Yeah.
typical influencer, maybe sort of 10 years ago, was a creator and a creator only. So you kind of got to that point where we were kind of over saturated with like daily life, and it's like appointments and things and stuff
Yeah.
like that, which again is not necessarily realistic to the average person.
Yeah, people crave like relatability, because you just want to, and that's when that community aspect comes in, because you feel like you know that person. There's so many people that I follow. I watch their YouTube, I watch their TikTok, and I feel like I know that person. And they're the kind of people that you talk to your friend like, oh, did you see such and such did that? And it's like as if you know them, but you don't. I've never met them in my life.
Yeah, so true.
One of my I love like Sophia Tuxford.
Do you know what I was going to ask you? I was going to say, who do you love watching? And I was thinking the whole time, Sophie and Cinzia.
Who doesn't? Do you
Their
know what I
vlogs
mean?
are so good, and also they've been really listening to like the feedback.
I really appreciate that, because all the comments were saying that
comments.
like, yeah, can you do more at home stuff, because it got to the point where only ever filming in the studio and stuff. And it's so nice to see that they've like taken that feedback. They really care for their community.
They do.
That's why they do so well, because people, again, like, especially their podcast, they feel like they know them, they're discussing, you feel like they're your friends, you know, and that is so valuable as a creator, to have that power.
Massively.
But yeah, I just love her like style, everything. My boyfriend's like, God, if I wasn't here, would you just I was like, yeah. He just knows now.
Yeah,
I always talk about her.
They are both so cool, and they've done it very, very well, and been able to kind of tap into their audience, listen to their audience.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say you've done in a similar like realm in terms of listening to your community? Anything that you might have received as like feedback, or pivoted into, or changed, or done more of?
I think like one thing that I do bounce between a bit, especially considering how I started out with the eating disorder and stuff, I don't post any kind of like dieting related content. I really steer away from that, the food that I post. And I found, because I had an audience of people that, they wanted that support with the food aspect, I don't really post stuff that's like, like low cal, and it's all just good food, makes you feel good, just what I want to eat, and what everyone should want to eat, really. So yeah, I guess that's probably what I'd steer away from. Other than that, no, I feel like the space I'm in is so nice. Never had like bad hate or anything like that, or horrible comments. But yeah, I would always take on any like feedback. Always love to know what people want to see and stuff like that. But yeah.
That's really cool. And just lastly, what would you say is the focus for your personal brand in like the next 5 years? Where would you love to see, your page and your channels going? Is there anything that you're sort of steering towards?
I would love to obviously grow the like coffee club community. I want to do more events. I would love to like branch outside of London. I'm not really sure what that's going to look like yet, in terms of like creating like subsequent clubs and stuff. But yeah, that's brought me so much joy. Helping people meet other people and bond over things has really brought me so much joy. So I want to keep doing that, because I do think at the end of the day, you should love what you do. So yeah, I think that would probably be the main goal for me. Obviously, growing the pages is a great thing to do. It just helps with a lot of other aspects, but it's not my main goal, I wouldn't say. I'm really happy with my little community, and I don't know if it's not the be all end all. I think the biggest thing at the moment, like for creators, is all about like staying relevant. Like we were saying earlier, people just blow up overnight now, and there's no barrier to entry to our industry. So yeah, it's what I can do to keep myself staying relevant, listening to, my community, what they want to see, and post content that's, easily consumed by them and they want to see, so I can just keep that audience engaged and keep having fun with it, really.
Definitely, I love that. I feel like you'll do that anyway naturally, because you also enjoy consuming content.
Yeah,
like you mentioned with like YouTube, and when you're in the world, it's always good to see like what others are creating, get inspired. And
yeah, that's my main source of inspiration,
great,
to be honest. It's just because I just live and breathe social media. Someone asked it to me the other day. They were like, God, you can talk so long about social media, and I was like, I just live and breathe it. Because even if I didn't do this for work, I'd still be like TikTok obsessed, and it's just
you'd be consuming it one way or another, but you just happen to be in the community creating yourself. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so nice to be able to like scroll and be like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I would love to like, adapt on that and
Yeah.
be able to act on it instead of just watching it. Before, like, I was obviously a creative brain and I would watch all of that and be like, oh, that's cool. And now it's like, okay, that's cool, let's action that.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's lovely chatting to you.
And kind of getting to know you a bit further. I will, of course, link all of Hannah's details below and the coffee club dates as well. That would be fantastic. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having
See
me.
you next week, guys. Bye.